All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Hai Nguyen. I'm co-founder of Affluence, the company behind Matrix. Hopefully you're here today because you're interested in learning more about Matrix. And so this webinar will be an introduction to Matrix. I'll be doing my best to cover several goals. First thing I want to mention is that this webinar is recorded. And so I'll share the recording with everyone afterwards. And then at the same time, there's a chat section here. So during the webinar, if you have any questions whatsoever, please share them and I'll do my best to address them after my demo and then of the presentation as well. It's a good chance for you to ask me about features, tips, or anything that would make you more efficient and more effective at using Matrix. With that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Our goals for today, help you understand the basics of Matrix. I think that's very important that you can walk away from today's webinar knowing how to use the product at the most basic level, but also at the most productive level. And then help you become more effective and efficient at prioritizing tasks, project, and emails. And so I do highlight the difference between effective and efficient, right? The efficient is doing things more quickly, but effective is doing the right things. And so when we talk about prioritization, we also talk about prioritizing different types of activities. And so Matrix does a fantastic job of helping you differentiate between tasks as well as emails. And then help you envision what your work and life success may look like with Matrix. And then lastly, one of the things that has been on the top of my mind, even now, has been my goals for 2024 and how to use Matrix to ensure that you meet those goals. One of the things that I find really interesting, and you've probably seen so many stories of this too, is that, in January, everyone is so gung-ho about their priorities, all the things they want to do in 2024. And then, they're talking about it. And then by February, right now, you're already starting to forget about all those goals that you had. So how do you use something like Matrix to ensure that you actually work on those things that you care most for this year? And so I'll share with you some of the tricks that I have to ensure that you work on the right things. So one of the things I want to highlight are the challenges that I've seen over and over again with customers that I talk to. The first is that team members seem to always have trouble understanding what's priority right now. One thing that's so interesting is it doesn't matter what your team size is. You could be a team size of 5 or you could be a team size of 50 within a particular group. And you actually have a hard time understanding what everyone's working on. And then at the same time, you don't know where you fit in within the big picture. And so you have all these meetings just to get together to talk about priorities. And then afterwards, nothing is actually done about it. And so one of the things that I think I see over and over again is that, we're working with more and more projects, multiple areas responsibilities, right? No longer are we working on just one project or one type of task. We're all, inundated with so many different things. And so at the same time, how do you keep track on the status of work across all these areas responsibilities? And then thirdly, emails and meetings are just causing far too much context switching. Ironically, over the last couple of years, there's been an explosion in the amount of tools that's out there for you to communicate, to prioritize, to manage projects and so forth. And yet at the same time, you're still getting emails, you're still getting messages here and there, you're still in meetings. And so, we're actually not doing a better job of tracking all the work we have to do. Instead, we're just switching between more and more tools. And so that's a constant problem that I've seen across all our customers. So what is Matrix? Matrix is a comprehensive email priority and project management software that helps at all 3 levels. At the individual level, we help you prioritize your most important task in email. At the team level, we help you be aligned with your coworkers so everyone's on the same page with respect to the priorities of your most important projects. And then at the organization level, we actually create what I call the single source of truth to become more effective and more efficient. So what that means is if you know what your priorities are, and then your team knows what your priorities are, and the whole organization knows what everyone's priorities are, then imagine how much more effective and more efficient you'd be, right? You're not spending time working on things that don't matter because you know how it reflects within the entire organization. So that's the hope that, I'm hoping that when you're here today and you're listening to this webinar or you're watching this afterwards on the recording, I want you to think about these 3 goals and that if you're using Matrix, you should be able to achieve these things right here. And if you're not, then something is wrong, right? So reach out to us if you're not meeting these goals, because the point is the software is designed to exactly help you tackle this. So how does Matrix solve those problems that I mentioned earlier? First, we use what's called the four-quadrant methodology to promote effective prioritization. So I'll go into details around that philosophy. Secondly, Matrix provide different views, such as the one-on-one, the agenda, the timeline, to help you understand what needs to be done within the right context. And so when we talk about so many different projects that's on our plate at any point in time, what you want to know is, hey, what's my priority within this particular context, right? If I'm working with another person, what are my priorities for that person? What if I'm working on a certain type of category of projects? What are my priorities across these projects? And then thirdly, given all these tools that we have, Party Matrix provides what's one of the most integrated solution in the Microsoft Teams and Outlook ecosystem. And so what we're able to do is actually tie everything together. So then when you're using Outlook and when you're using Teams, it's almost a no-brainer to use it with Party Matrix, because we can actually pull all that into one central place, and then you know exactly what you need to work on. So what makes Matrix better is that it's the only project email and meeting management software that's Microsoft 365 security certified across Teams, Outlook, and web at the same time. And one of the things that we're investing in is actually to help you achieve your goals. So we're building everything for our business customers, everything from checklists to templates and so forth that actually meets your specific needs. And so we're trying our absolute best to help you actually become more efficient and more effective. And so one of the things I want you to take away from today's webinar too is that, again, if you're using Matrix and you're struggling, and if you're finding that for some reason, you're not actually tracking the right things, then again, that's a problem that needs to be addressed. And so Matrix is extremely adaptable. And so it's a matter of how to figure out to make it work within your specific needs. And then Matrix also provide what I call people-centric collaboration. So one of the things that I find, really interesting with a lot of project management software out there, and it doesn't matter where you get it from because there's thousands, right? What happens is you're taking project, you're taking task and so forth. But then when you really think about it, when you're working on something, you're also doing something for other people. And so what I mean by that is, when you have a meeting with your manager, you need to talk about all the things that you have to do for your manager across all of your projects. It's not just one. And then vice versa. When you're in a meeting with your direct reports, you want to know, what are they working on? What are the priorities across all of those projects? And so Party Matrix actually gives you all these different views that allow you to see the things you have to do with a people first point of view. And then lastly, Party Matrix is available as a standard SaaS solution, which is obviously what I'll be showing you today. But we also have a HIPAA compliant solution for healthcare and life sciences, an Azure government cloud for state and local governments, as well as managed private Azure deployments. So if you're in any of these other spaces that you're interested in learning more about our enterprise solution, either in education, nonprofit, or elsewhere, please reach out to us. support@affluence.com or hi@affluence.com, and we'd be happy to talk. So what makes Party Matrix effective is that we help you understand what needs to be done now, what needs to be done later, and what are the things you should delegate. And then lastly, Party Matrix offer one central place where everyone can go to know what needs to be done. And actually that key, the reason why I highlight that is because it's so important to understand that you're using Party Matrix correctly. So again, if you are managing a team, all you have to do is to put the appropriate information inside Party Matrix, so then when anyone has a trouble understanding what they need to work on, or what they don't know what the priorities are for the team, they just go to Party Matrix and they know exactly what the priorities are. And if you manage to do that, then you're using Party Matrix correctly. So let's talk about the philosophy behind Party Matrix. There's a famous quote attributed to former President Eisenhower: "What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important." What I really like about this quote is that it teases out the dimensions of importance and urgency. Instead of looking at your long task list, right? So again, if I ask you to do an exercise right now, write down all the things you have to do. And so you start jotting them down. And so you have 5 things, 10 things, 15 things. Now, the next question I have for you is, what do you work on first? Do you work on the thing that you wrote at the top of the list, or do you work on the things at the bottom of the list? And then if you have to add more tasks, where do you add it? At the top of the list or the bottom of the list, right? And so instead of having one linear list, what we do is we take all these tasks that we have and split it into 4 buckets. The first bucket is the important and urgent bucket, right? These are the things that you have to get done and you got to do now. And then the second, the important but not urgent, are the things you should start planning for. Because in reality, if you have any spare time, and if you're not fighting fires in the quadrant 1 do now, then you want to be planning for quadrant 2, the things that you should work on next. And then the things that are not important, perhaps you could delegate to others. And then lastly, in the inbox is where you actually capture all the ideas and all the things you could do, or you don't know how it fits within the bigger picture. So one of the things that I want you to do, during this webinar, or after this webinar, or just part of your exercise with your team, is actually ask everyone to do this exercise, which is to write down the things they have to do and then put it into the appropriate quadrant, right? So imagine if your manager writes down his or her priorities, and then they have it in the appropriate quadrant, and then you write down yours, and then your coworker write down yours, and then guess what? Look at each other's sheets and compare notes, right? You can do this on a piece of paper. You don't have to use Matrix. And so when you compare notes, that's when the magic happens. So when you use the Eisenhower Matrix, as in the 4 quadrants, what it does is it forces you to prioritize from the very beginning, and then it actually forces you to surface up the discrepancy within the team, right? And so success from using Matrix isn't about finding what everyone agrees on. It's discovering disagreement on what should be a priority when it isn't. And that is actually a key insight in all of this, which is a lot of times I feel like we stumble around on the work that we do, right? You start your day, you start working on things. Is it the most important thing? I don't know. It's just one of those things that you do. And so what happens is that you lack this visibility from what everyone else is thinking about what's important. And so by using Matrix, everyone's on the same page. And so now you never have an issue of misunderstanding what it is that you should be working on. And because Matrix is so visual in terms of the 4 quadrant methodology to understand priorities, there is no mistake when it comes to prioritization. And so when you have a meeting and you're projecting Matrix on the big screen, you can just go through the things in quadrant 1. And guess what? If you see something in another quadrant that belongs in quadrant 1, just drag it over. And so that's the point. And so with that, I actually want to walk you through the product, show you how to use it, show you the capabilities that I think are most important. But I do want to mention that we do record the webinars and we post it on the website at affluence.com/webinars. There's a couple of other webinars that I also have that I do recommend for those that want a deeper dive later, which is email management. So I'll be showing some basics here, but if you like the stuff around email management, I have a more dedicated webinar to that. And then also the templating system, which is really neat as a way to actually create recurring workflow inside Matrix. Okay, now I'm going to jump to the product. As I mentioned, if you do have questions, send them in the chat or send me an email afterwards, and I'd be happy to answer them. All right, let me bring up my Matrix. Okay, so now I have the web app in Matrix open. Now, Matrix works on almost every single platform. We have the web app, which obviously means you can access from any computer. We also have native Mac app, native desktop, Windows app. We have Microsoft Teams app. We have Outlook app. We have Android, iOS. It integrates inside Outlook as well. We have extensions for Gmail, for Chrome, for Edge. We have extensions that works with Microsoft Copilot and so forth. So I just want to mention that, for those who are sort of confused around how Matrix works, the neat thing is it's accessible no matter where you are. And that's actually really important when it comes to understand priority. So what that means is that you can have people out in the field. They know, they can see all their projects, they can see all their tasks, they can see their assignments, they know exactly what they have to do. And then people back at the office still have that same visibility. Anyways, so here I have the web app open. As you can see, front and center is the 4 quadrants, right? I have the do now, the do later, the delegate, the inbox. And let me explain the structure of Matrix here. On the left-hand side are projects. So this is my list of projects. As you can see, I have a decent number of projects here, a few dozen. In my real account, I have more than 300 projects. And Matrix is extremely powerful and flexible, and I can actually manage all 300 projects without really struggling at all in terms of understanding what I need to work on. Because as you can see, I actually prioritize my project as well. So I star the ones that are active, right? The ones that are most important. Those are the ones, the project that I star. And the way it works is when I have a project selected, on the right-hand side is my project details. So this is information around the project itself. So here, the project I've selected open is my personal priority. So imagine yourself doing this. You have a project in Matrix called My Personal Priorities, and then you have the 4 quadrants, and within that, you have additional information that you might want to add. So for example, I can invite people to this project, so then these other people can also access my priority list if needed. I can actually go and change the color of the quadrants. I can actually change the quadrant name. So instead of do now, maybe I want to call it something different. Instead of delegate, I might want to call it something different. And so those are other things you can do with Matrix. And then lastly, one of the things I like to do within the project itself is actually starring it. So essentially, I like to have around 5 to 10 star project at any point in time, and these are the ones that's at the top of the list, right? But then if something that's not active, you just unstar it, and then it goes down, and it's just sorted by modification dates and so forth. So that lets you to see and easily access the projects that matter at this moment in time. Okay, now let's go back to the quadrant itself. As you can see, right now my matrix is blank, right? So what I want to do is maybe I want to create some tasks. Now, what are tasks inside Part Matrix? Tasks, well, we call them items, but the items can be anything. It could be something you have to do. It could be a resource, a file, a document that you need to review. It could be a link. It could be something from SharePoint. It could be something that you want to assign to other people. So as an example, I'm going to go ahead and say follow up with webinar participants. Okay, that's something that I will do after this call. And then I'm going to go ahead and say due at 2 p.m. Okay. And so as you can see, I have the task here, but I also type in due at 2 p.m. Matrix actually uses what's called natural language. And so we try to interpret that and set the due date for you. So go ahead and click add. And now the task is created, and now my project details is replaced with item details. So what an item details is, it's just additional information around the task itself. Now I'm sure you've probably used various task management software or to-do lists before, and so it's very similar. What happens is you always sort of add additional metadata to the task. That adds additional color to the information that you have. So in this particular case, the item details show me what project it belongs in, and I can hover over this and move it to a different project if needed. I can actually also star it too. So starring here does the exact same thing, which is within the quadrant itself, it pushes to the top of the list. So I like to star my most active or my most important task within any particular quadrant. So obviously you want to focus on quadrant 1, but at the same time, you might have star items within the other quadrants as well. So you know that, okay, when I'm in quadrant 2, these are the things I want to think about. And so I like to use star a lot. Actually, that's one of those things where I'm using more and more. And so I do recommend to customers as well to use that. Below that, you can add icons. And so if you click on icons, you'll see some choices here. A lot of it comes down to personal preferences. And from my perspective, there's just 2 types of icons that I think is actually really valuable for most folks in general, which is the numbers as a way to easily show a different priority level. And then finally, you also use something like color. So red, yellow, or green as a way to signify maybe, this is on schedule or not on schedule, et cetera. One tip that I have around using numbers is, instead of trying to say, we have 9 different priority level, I would use just 3 numbers, 1, 3, and 9. And actually, there's some research around this that I've worked on many, many years ago around prioritization. And it just shows that actually by using 1, 3, and 9, you actually think less. You have to, you don't have to worry about whether something is a priority 5 or 6 or something like that. You just got to decide, is it a 3 or is it a 9? And it's a little bit easier to do that. So that's something that you can use if you want to use some visualization on the priority at each task level. So as you can see down below that, I have owner. One of the things that Matrix allows you to do is very easy delegation. Matrix was designed very, very long time ago as a product that works at the individual level, right? And so what we do is we helped individual prioritize their task. And then over time, Matrix evolved And then it allows you to actually delegate your task to others. And so now everyone can be on the same page. And so when you think about delegation here, it's really about just assign it to another person. So there's a different owner. But when I assign to somebody, I remain a follower. And so what that means is that I will get status update as this task is updated. And then you have progress, 0 to 100%. You have effort, and how much, not all tasks are created equal. And then you have due dates and reminders, which are, in my opinion, the most important features in Matrix. So I want to pause here and emphasize that, if you're new to Matrix and you create tasks in Matrix, set due dates and set reminders. It is so, so important. And here's the reason why. If you think about prioritization and you think about importance and urgency, yes, you can say this is a star task. Yes, you can say that this is a quadrant 1. But if you don't set due dates, how will you actually get around to it, right? How do you know when you need to get it done? Because it could be important, but is it going to be done tomorrow or is it going to be done in 2 years? And so that is so critical as part of your own methodology around prioritization, so you understand where it is you need to put your effort. So in my opinion, when you use Matrix, always set due dates on the most important task and set reminders. And now the difference between due dates and reminders is following. Let's just say if you have to work on taxes. Taxes is due April 15th, right? You set due date April 15th. Great. April 15th comes around, you get a notification in Matrix, and you're like, oh, taxes are due. Are you going to get that done? You may not. And so imagine if a task actually takes you hours or days of work prior, then you want to make sure that it's actually setting you a reminder. So you can click on reminder here and then choose a date and so forth. But the way I like to do it in Matrix is I like to use our natural language. So instead of actually just saying, typing or clicking on the reminder button, I would say, remind me daily. So what I've just done is that I've created a task, and then what I did next is actually set a recurring reminders until I finish this task. And so as you can see, the text turned green. This means that Matrix actually understood that, again, as a natural language. And you could type things like remind me weekly, remind me monthly, remind everybody daily, something like that, to ensure that everyone who's following this task get the proper notifications. I strongly, strongly recommend the reminder system. I think it's so powerful as a way to ensure that it's top of mind for you. Okay, so due dates, reminders. You can set recurring due dates and so forth too, of course, in there. And then below that, you have chat, notes, and resources. Chat, as you can see, is where you can have a conversation around the item itself. Now, with one person, obviously you're not chatting with anybody, but the chat section becomes a place where you can type in commands, or you can see the changes of the task as part of history. So you see how when I create this task, I set the due date and then I added the tag. And so it actually has an audit trail of all the changes. And it's so useful, if you think about it, if you just made all these changes today, sure, you remember why you change things. But imagine if 6 months from now, you're trying to review a task and you're like, wait a minute, what was the original due date? Did I change the due date? Were there some notes attributed with it, et cetera, et cetera. Matrix keeps track of all that record for you. And it is so useful on a per item basis because it helps you track all of those changes. And then secondly, if you want to, to assign a task to somebody else, like let's just say if you have a task and you have, multiple conversations with multiple people in one central place, and then you have a brand new person that you're bringing onto the team and you need them to take over the task. Well, guess what? If you have to have a meeting just to go over everything, that person may not even know the full context. But by using the chat section, they can look back in here, they can review back to the very, very beginning of the task and see all the changes, all the record, all the conversation, and so forth. Extremely useful. The second thing I like about the chat is that it is within context. So you probably use Microsoft Teams, you use Outlook for sending your emails back and forth all the time. And you can see how we have so many different places where we have communication, right? So by using the chat within the context of an item, it actually stays relevant within that context. Because, inside Teams, we have conversations around 15 different things at any point in time. And again, it's great that you can remember it today, but you're not going to be able to remember 6 months from now. The notes section is where you can add subtasks and also bullets and so forth. It is not intended to be, rich text and so forth. You can use Microsoft Word or Google Docs for that. But this is where you can add a little bit of information that helps you track the status of various tasks. And the resources section is where you can attach links, files, documents, websites, and all that other information that might be relevant to this task. One of the neat things about Matrix is our email integration. So what that allows you to do is you can actually attach emails to task. And then at the same time, you can attach, SharePoint documents and so forth all in here. Matrix also lets you link different tasks together. And so that's allowing you to link existing Matrix item, create dependencies in order to build Gantt charts, et cetera, as needed. So speaking of email, let me show you quickly how to attach an email and how to prioritize email. So for example, here I have Outlook open, okay? So this is Outlook on the web, but of course you might have Outlook on desktop. As long as you use Outlook 365, Matrix is there. So let me give you an example. I'll close this and I'll show you how it works. Let's just say I get an email in, and let's just say I have a lot of emails, and actually that's a very true statement. I get a couple hundred emails a day, and so for me, email prioritization is so critical, mostly because the easy emails, sometimes I can respond to, and sometimes I star them and all that, but if I need to follow up with somebody in like 3 days or 4 days, if I just start, it is not sufficient. I won't remember. There's just too many things going on at any point in time. So what Matrix allows me to do is convert an email into a task. So I click on this right here. There's Matrix, and there's an option that says Matrix, and the name is turn email into task. You just click on that, and if you don't have this installed already, you simply click add apps and choose Matrix for Outlook. And so turn email into task. And then I have two options. I can prioritize email or open Matrix. I'm going to choose prioritize the email. A right-hand side panel opens up, and what this allows me to do is turn this email into a task directly from Outlook. I don't have to go anywhere. It's very easy. All I have to do is click capture email. But I can also change the item name, right? It takes a subject, but I can change it as needed. I can choose what project it goes in, and I can choose what quadrant it goes in. So let me give you some examples where this is powerful. Let's just say if you're in sales, and what happens, you work with external customers, right? And so now you get a customer that actually sends you a message, and you want to track it as part of your sales pipeline. You can see how easy it is for you to prioritize that customer email and making sure that you follow up and set the due dates as needed. And then the other thing you can do is actually can also delegate this email to somebody else, which is really neat, because most of the time, we get an email, sometimes we respond to it, but at the same time, we might need information from other people. In fact, this happens to me every single day where I have to assign an email to another person because I need some sort of information, and then that person responds to me, and then I can go and respond to the customer as needed. And so the owner is the person who actually, their avatar shows up, but then at the same time, it allows you to be a follower on this. So then when there's a status update on the email, And of course, set your due dates. Don't forget to set that due dates on those emails. It is so important. Then Reporting Matrix will remind you to actually go back and respond to that email. So I'm going to go ahead and choose a due date. I'll choose for tomorrow, and then I'm going to click capture email. And as you can see, this now replaces with the item details. I mentioned how in the resources section, you see that email is actually attached here in the resources section of Matrix. Now there's an EML file there. If I need to assign this to another person, all I got to do is do that. And now Eugenia can go in and take a look at the email, can open the email as needed, and even respond to it. But the other neat thing is that I can actually, you see how here, if once I created that task, one of the things I like to do again is remind me daily. And now on a daily basis, Matrix will send me a reminder through our application or through Microsoft Teams chatbot that I need to work on this email. But think about, imagine you have to respond to this email in 3 months, right? Then setting a reminder that says remind me monthly or something like that would ensure that you actually get back to this email. The other neat thing about Matrix is that it actually allows you to attach the email to an existing task. So again, let's go to the use case where you have an external client that sends you an email and you already have a task associated with it, but now you want other people to be aware that there's an updated email. Well, instead of creating a whole new task from email, you can actually click there and then just search for the task, for example. And then what happens is the task shows up from Matrix, and then I just attach the email to an existing task. Very, very helpful, and you can actually store a bunch of emails in one single task. You can store all the documents, the SharePoint link, etc., on one central place. And one of the ways that you can easily attach various links and so forth is simply use the Edge extension or the Chrome extension. You just click on the extension and create task or attach that document that you're viewing directly to any Matrix task. Matrix for Outlook is actually really neat too, because the other thing you can do is you can actually even install Matrix inside Outlook, right? So if you go to more apps here, you can search for Matrix. And so Matrix is one of the very few universal apps for Microsoft. So what that means is you can have it actually install here, pin it, and then check this out. I have all of Matrix inside Outlook. I don't even have to go into any web app or whatever. I access as needed, just like a Microsoft app. So now that we're back inside Matrix, let's talk about a couple of other things that I think is actually pretty important. Let's just imagine if you want to use Matrix for managing your goals. Let me give you some tips around that. So go ahead and create a project called Goals for 2024. And so let me show you how to create a project. Let's just go here. And what you do is I'm going to go create project. And then I have several options to create project. I can choose a blank project, or I can choose a public templates project. And so what happens is a public templates, these are just various templates that we've created. And so in fact, we actually have hundreds of templates that you can use. And what the templates do is that one, it can change the name of the quadrants, or two, it actually can pre-populate some of the tasks for you, like a checklist. So for example, if you're you're a sourcing, you source vendors or something like that, where you have to go and ensure that the vendors go through several validation steps and so forth, you can actually build those templates and save that as a template here and then access those projects as needed. But I'm going to go ahead and choose a blank project. Here, you just type in the project name. You can choose the quadrant colors, and then you can choose the type of template here as well. And that's it. That's all you have to do to add a project. But I'm going to go ahead and go back to this goals for 2024. So one of the things I like to do for this particular type of project, I changed the quadrant name to long-term goals, short-term goals, things I will not do, and ideas. My whole point here is that you can name the quadrants whatever it is that makes it easy for you to understand where you need to work on, where you need to spend your time. So as you use Matrix within your organization, what we've seen is we've seen best practices come out of the people who are actually in the days and day in and day out in terms of managing their own tasks within the organization. And so organizations will actually end up creating various types of matrices, save that as a template, and then create their own internal guide on how to best use Matrix. And so with Matrix flexibility, it allows you to actually adapt it to your specific needs. And what's neat about it is it doesn't matter what kind of project you have. You know, you could be a law firm, you could be a logistic company, you could be manufacturing, you could be in finance, and you can actually adapt the quadrants to whatever needs that you have. But let's talk about goals for 2024. Let's just say I create a goal here, read a new business book monthly, right? Now, if I just created that as a simple goal, I know that I'll start forgetting it. If I don't set a due date, if I don't set reminders. So what I've done is I set a recurring reminders, remind me monthly. What's really powerful about this is it's a way to trick your brain into working on things that are important. So as you know, when we think about important and urgent tasks, what happens is that we usually get pulled away from the important task by the urgent task. And so when you check your email, it's the last email in, right? That's the one that you look at. And so it's always the same, which is, you know, when you get assigned a task, it's that last task that is assigned to you that is always top of mind. So the way to trick your brain into working on the most important thing is to actually set these recurring reminders so that on a monthly basis, it pops back up. And so for me, if I truly have a goal that is, you know, read a new business book monthly, the best way to ensure that I will actually do it is to set this recurring reminder, and Matrix will ping me on a monthly basis, and I will see that, and I was like, oh yeah, that's what I wanted to do. And at least it's top of mind. I really, really like this trick. So if you're using Matrix for goal management or anything that is truly important, make sure you do that. And so the way you get notifications for Matrix is in the home view. So at the very top here, there's a home view. And if you click on that, what happens is it shows you what's called your alerts. These are where all the notifications come in. So for example, somebody assigned you a task, or a task that you assigned to another person got updated, or a due date is here, or a reminder triggers. And so on a daily basis, you can look at the alert section and see where you need to spend your time and what are the things that's relevant to you. Now, of course, what I like to do is I like to clear all notifications once in a while because my notifications list will start building up. And that is why you have those recurring reminders. Because, if you come back from vacation after a week, you're going to see so many notifications that, you may have trouble going through the whole list. And so you want to say, you know what, I want to clean slate, I'll clear all notifications, and if it's important enough, it'll come back to me. And that's the way it works. So if you clear all notifications here, all the recurring reminders will start coming back to you again as needed, and then you can go through that list. And so inside Matrix, there's also a couple of other views that you have. So for example, you can go to agenda, which shows you a time-based view. So these are all the things you have to do for today, tomorrow, the things that are overdue, et cetera. So instead of just thinking about from the dimensions of using the 4-quadrant, you can actually look at your Matrix action items from all the different perspectives. And so earlier I mentioned around people-centric, right? So for example, what you might want to know is you might want to find all your items across all your projects, but then you might want also to know what are all the items you have to do for your manager. And so the way to do that is to use what's called the one-on-one. So if you open this here, you can choose the one-on-one. The way it works with the one-on-one is that all you have to do is select another person. So for example, I select another person here. And what happens is I see all the tasks I have in common with that person across all of my projects. So if you're a manager and you have 5 or 6 direct reports and you want to know what are all the things that they're working on across all the projects and the status, and what are the things that are overdue, you go to the one-on-one, select each person, and you can see the status of things directly here. And it is so helpful and so useful. And then not only that, you can assign people new tasks directly from here by clicking add share task, and you can type the task name. It automatically assigns to the other person and invite you as a follower, and you can just choose what project it goes in. So I really like the one-on-one view, and this is that people-centric view that I mentioned, because then you don't have to worry about going to a project, creating a task, delegating to somebody. And not only that, it actually allows you to pull in your Microsoft 365 action items as well. So if your organization gives you the appropriate permission, you can actually pull in planner tasks, emails, meetings, and so forth. And Matrix also gives you that one-on-one context directly here. Okay, so we've talked about projects, we've talked about creating projects, we've talked about customizing projects, we've talked about creating items and setting due dates and setting and delegating them. We've talked about email prioritization. I want to switch gear a little bit and talk about our Microsoft Teams integrations, because I think that's actually really powerful. So we're probably the most integrated solution inside Teams itself. So the way to get the Teams app is, of course, go to the App Store and install Matrix, and then afterwards just pin it right here. And when you open Matrix, you see the whole Matrix application. It's just like what you saw in the web app, just like what you saw in the Outlook app. But there's a couple of neat things, is that one, we actually have integrations within the chat itself. So for example, let's just say if you, again, manage multiple people, you can go to the chat section here. You can open what's called a one-on-one directly within Microsoft Teams. So what's really neat about this is you might have all these people that you're talking to. You can install the one-on-one, and now it pre-selects them. And so that allows you to jump to the one-on-one without even having to open Matrix. All you have to do is access your regular Teams chat. The way you do install that is you click on this plus, choose Matrix, choose a one-on-one view, and select the person. One of the nice things about Matrix too is the ability to actually add projects from Matrix inside your Teams conversation as well. So let me give you an example. Let's just say you're in a Teams channel and you have a Teams channel that's like marketing, right? You can go and add your project, your Matrix marketing project, in that Teams channel, so everyone can actually just access that project inside Teams without having to leave the Teams application. So what I like about that is it reduces context switching. And so how many times you have to switch applications just to find out what you need to do? Well, Matrix helps you overcome all of that by providing the information that you need within the context itself of the application. The other thing you can do with our Microsoft Teams app is actually you can convert any conversation, any messages into a task. And so it's just like how you converted an email into a task, Matrix lets you take any message that someone sends you and create a task directly from that. The other thing too, of course, you can always send Matrix action items as part of a team's conversation. And so sometimes, let me give you a use case here. Sometimes, you delegate something to somebody inside Matrix and then you didn't hear back from them, right? Or you want to give someone a status update, what you can do is you can open up Matrix and send them a message here, and it pops up like an action item here, letting them access those Matrix items really easily. I'm not going to go into details, but Matrix also works with your meetings, allowing you to pull up the agenda inside your Teams meeting. We also have integrations with what's called, if you go here, you go to apps, you search for Priority Matrix. We have what's called workflow integrations that allows you to create if this then that environment. So then it allows you to say, when a Microsoft form is submitted, create a task in Priority Matrix, et cetera. And then we also work with Copilot and so forth. So these are other things that you can explore on your own when you want to. But the point is, you don't have to, right? The point is, Matrix actually just works at the most basic level, allowing you to prioritize your task and ensure that you're working the right thing. Like I said, the most important features in Matrix are that reminders and due dates, right? Everything else is secondary. Everything else is around taking from essentially those few capabilities in Matrix where, again, you create a task, put in the appropriate quadrants, setting due dates and so forth. That's 80% of the value in Matrix. Ironically, I feel like if you did nothing else except for that, you will find that you're going to have a lot better clarity on the priorities that you have across your whole team already. But if you want to go from 80% to 95%, then all these other capabilities that we have is intended to essentially customize your needs around that. A couple of things, I usually get asked, what are the commands that you have? You can type into Matrix. We actually have a help article on that. We also have connectors that allows you to pull in other types of other software items that you might have, Jira or To-Do or Planner, et cetera. You can pull that into Matrix. And then, of course, Matrix works on Edge as well as Chrome. So you can actually go and install our extensions for each of those. And then, of course, this is where we have what's called Power Automate connectors. And so this is allowing you to actually set up all sorts of rules using Matrix, giving you a lot of flexibility. We also have a lot of templates. And so I mentioned that, some of those templates you saw within the application, but you can actually go and go to a template gallery and see all these different templates that you can use. Now, I'm going to wrap up by showing you a couple of things that I think is actually very, very useful with Matrix, which is one, if you start using Matrix more and more and that you find you have recurring tasks, what you can do with Matrix is actually save things as save projects as templates as well. This is very useful if you have something like employee onboarding, where they have 10 items that employees always have to work on, right? And so if you go to here and you save the project as template, what that allows you to do is that when you launch a new project, instead of just launching a blank project, you launch a project with all the tasks, all the due dates already in place. And then all you have to do is say what's the start date is, and Matrix automatically set those due dates for you. Extremely useful if you have recurring, series of action items that you have to do. The other thing you can do with Matrix is actually switch different views. So for example, I have another project here open with more tasks in it. Instead of actually just looking at the matrix view, I can actually go up here and I can change view to what's called the list view. The list view lets me see all my tasks, but also shows the due dates and I can sort it. I like this view if you want to find out what are something that's like coming up, like as in a due date that's coming up. Or you want to see things that are overdue, because anything that's overdue just has a red color here, very easy to spot them. And you can click on each of these and access each task as needed. You can also go to the calendar view. Anything that has due dates will show up in the calendar view. And so again, if follow my recommendation, set due dates and reminders, recurring reminders for all your most important tasks. And so when you go to due dates here, you can see them. You can actually just click on them and access them as needed, or drag and drop them to change the due dates. You can also go to what's called the timeline view, which is the Gantt chart. So what you can do is actually create dependencies between items. And the way to do that is actually pretty straightforward. You go to the resources section, click link existing item, and then you just choose another item that's relevant to this task. And then up here, you can just say that, this task is blocked by or blocks or causes by or causes. And so that allows you to actually link all these items together, and then you can actually build a Gantt chart from that. And what's nice about this is it's all done automatically. You don't even have to worry about generating this. All you have to do is just set those tasks and those due dates, right? And so if you need to run reports and actually share information with external parties or with your manager, et cetera, Party Matrix gives you that flexibility and have all these views that you can use. The other thing I've seen people do is actually, if you go to the project details again, you can also export Party Matrix as a CSV. And so if you want to really give somebody else a snapshot of your current project, you can export it as CSV, then just clean it up as needed. Now, there's several other ways to integrate Party Matrix with email. And so when you think about, let's just say, I'll give you an example. Like I'm on the road all the time. And so I sometimes check my email on the phone, and, with my phone, I have Apple Mail, so I don't have Outlook installed there. So what I need to do is, if I have an email that I need to make sure that I respond to, I can forward it into my Party Matrix inbox. And so if you click on inbox here, you have a secret inbox address. And so when you send an email to that secret inbox address, it creates a task for you here inside Party Matrix. And then you can go and prioritize that or delegate that or do whatever it is that you need to do afterwards. And so if you're interested in learning that, then do check out that email management masterclass webinar. Okay. With that, I think I've given you a very, very high level overview of the features of Party Matrix. I think, as you can tell, there's so many capabilities, but one thing that I want to emphasize over and over again is that you don't need to use all of these features to ensure that you are successful with the software. In fact, I think that when in the very beginning, the most important thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you set, when you create these tasks, you put them in the appropriate quadrants, right? And so again, if you put in the wrong quadrant or you need to reprioritize, you just drag and drop as needed. And then make sure you set those due dates, make sure you set those reminders. And if that's all you do, I'll be extremely happy. I think that you'll find that is sufficient for you to track all your priorities. And then the other thing is, if you do have multiple team members, make sure that you share these projects with them so then everyone's on the same page. The nice thing about this is that if you have a shared team project, everyone can be on the same page without having to have meetings, right? What happens is we have all these meetings just to talk about priorities. And so why do you have to do that? And so instead of actually doing it synchronously, where everyone has to be in the same room, you do it asynchronously. So then everyone can just log into Party Matrix at the appropriate time or whenever is convenient for them and actually just look at the party list and have conversations around that. So then when you're together in the meeting, instead of talking about the status update on things that don't matter, you can just focus on stuff at quadrant 1, and then if you find that they're misprioritized tasks, then you can prioritize them as needed. Okay, with that, I'm going to go back to my presentation real quick just to wrap things up here. So if you haven't already, make sure you sign up for Party Matrix. If you do use Teams and Outlook, definitely try to install them. Again, Party Matrix is a Microsoft 365 security certified solution. So if sometimes you need IT approval, but it should be relatively straightforward. Just request it from IT as needed. For you, I generally recommend that you create at least 3 projects: the personal priorities, a shared team priorities, and key initiative. The reason why I say key initiatives is, it's a way for you to track things that are actually important for you this year. And then, of course, a goal for 2024 is always a really good project to have. And I think if you create a project like I did, short-term goals, long-term goals, put some tasks in there, set your recurring reminders, you can actually ensure that you actually work on those things. One thing that's not so obvious is pitch to your coworkers on why it's important to use something like Party Matrix to ensure that everyone's on the same page. I think, again, so many of us just working on so many different things, and we're so busy, we don't have time to prioritize. It's absolutely ironic, but it's so important to be aligned and working on the right things. I think the worst thing you can do is doing the best that you can on the wrong job, right? And so you work on a task that don't matter. And so I think that's a worst use of time in any scenario. And so hopefully when you use Party Matrix and you're working on something, you're looking at quadrant 1, and that's where you're focusing your effort. And then ruthlessly prioritize. And I say that because, if you don't prioritize your own time, somebody else will. And so make sure that you prioritize everything you need to do, even if you don't use it within your team, or even if you don't share your priority list with others, prioritize your own time because it is so, so important. So a couple of advice, try to use Priority Matrix to track high impact tasks. And so again, anything with due dates, anything with some sort of, where you have a choice that you can make, as in, do I work on it, or how much time I should put on it? That's very helpful. Always think of Priority Matrix as a communication tool too. What that means is that Priority Matrix helps communicate your priorities to others, right? And help others communicate their priorities to you. And so that's how it works with respect to a communication tool. And then use Priority Matrix to manage your individual goals. I think the most important thing about Priority Matrix in general is that if you can be successful at the individual level, then nothing else matters. And so hopefully, you're thinking about what are the things that's in your brain, put it down onto the software so then it's out of your head and you can actually decide what it is you should focus on. So what success with Priority Matrix should look like is that you have one central place to track all your priorities, and everyone on the team understands and are aligned on key tasks. Repetitive procedures are templatized, and important emails are prioritized. And so if you're not achieving this, then you're not using Priority Matrix to its full potential. So go back to square one and think again how to use Priority Matrix to make sure that you achieve these goals. And with that, I conclude my presentation and demo here. If there are any questions, if you send them in the chat right now, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, you can also send me an email and I'd be happy to look at them as well. Okay. So first question, is there a way to create a dashboard project to show project-related information? That's a great question. So if you were to use, let me show you here, make sure that I try to address this here. If you wanted to create a project and you want to track other information, this is how I would approach it. So let's just say if I go to project and then I'm going to create a new project. And so I'm going to say architecture project for client A. Okay, so go ahead and create a project, something like that. And then what happens is instead of using delegate, what I like to do here is actually, I can change this to information and resources. And so now what you can do is you change that quadrant name. Instead of using it for delegate, this is where you put that information that you mentioned. So you can add meeting notes and all that. If you use SharePoint or Google Docs, you can actually just drag them into here. So you have one central place to track all that extra metadata for the client information. And so now you have quadrant 1 and 2 to plan your actual task. And then this is where you track that additional information. Now, of course, within the project itself, you can actually add notes and dates and so forth, but that's at a very, very high level. And then what happens, you can also create a project of projects. I think that's slightly different from what you're asking, but I'll show you just in case. But let's just say you can create a, oops, I'm going to go blank project here. I'm going to go list of all architecture clients. Okay, so I have another project here that I create. And what I can do is actually, I go to this project, I can copy the link to this project, and I go to another project, and I can create a task with the link to the previous project. And so what I've just created is a project of projects. And so if you have multiple clients that you're working on, you can use a matrix to also prioritize the clients as well. And so you see how when I created that task, it allows me to jump to another project. So hopefully that information is useful, but the way that I would track all these other metadata for a client is to change one of the quadrant names to be resources. So is there a way to automate rules and tasks to an email? So what happens is that in every project of Protomatrix, in every quadrant of Protomatrix, there is a unique email address. So one of the things that I like to do is actually, I've set up rules where if I get an email from a specific, like for example, email from Microsoft, it automatically gets sent into my Microsoft project. So now when you, as a recruiter, one of the things you can do with Protomatrix is you can create rules. So then whatever it is in Outlook, right? And that rules trigger, it would forward the appropriate email into various quadrants inside Matrix or various types of projects. So let me show you how to get these unique emails here. You can see how I can go and get secret email address. And so when I have a project selected, right, I can get secret email address and I can say what quadrant it goes in and who to assign it to. And so again, by creating those forwarding rules, it just helps you organize the information as needed. Now, we don't have like a system where, automatically send the follow-up emails and so forth, but by using Matrix, you can again convert an email into a task, and then you have follow-up email. You can attach that to existing item, but also we do follow the thread of the email itself too. The webinar information, yes, this webinar is recorded, and so I'll be sharing this out afterwards. Again, there are a couple of other recordings on email management as well as templating system. So if you're looking to use Matrix to automate workflows, definitely check out the templating system. If you have a lot of emails to manage, check out the email management masterclass webinar. Fantastic. If there are no other questions, I'll end here. Thank you so much for being here today. And again, feel free to reach out to us, support@affluence.com or hi@affluence.com. Again, one of the things I do want to emphasize is that at the end of the day, Matrix will help you prioritize your tasks. So if you don't feel like you're doing that, then something is wrong, right? Reach out to us if you really need some advice around that. In terms of Matrix offering, for business and enterprise customers, we provide coaching as well as customizations and technical support. So if you're at an organization where you can make decisions around using Matrix at a high level for your department or for your whole team, we do have the necessary support to ensure that you're successful. Thank you so much for being here today. Bye-bye.